Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Beyond Recovery. I'm your host, Matt, and my guest today is Michael GRISWOLD, and we are going to be talking about microdosing magic mushrooms. We've had a few folks on before talking about microdosing, and Michael's here. He's at mightymicro.net. We're talking, yes, microdosing magic mushrooms for mental health. Lots of M's in here. Michael, how are you today?
And I'm doing great. I'm excited to chat with you about this and hopefully get a good discussion going that will spark some new ways of thinking about things that are important to people.
Yeah, absolutely. I really, I'm digging your YouTube page. I'm loving what you're doing, and I want to get into how you got to where you are. You have a pretty amazing and unique story and a very emotional one, I imagine, and we'll get into it. But before we do, let's just get into the overview of the nuts and bolts of mightymicro.net. What kind of services are you providing right now?
Well, when we look around, excuse me, when we look around at what's going on with people and how people are feeling, we notice that a lot of people don't feel so great. That people are chronically depressed and anxious, and lots of people running around with scars from PTSD that keep them feeling like they're on the outskirts of life. And if we look, the answers or the possible solutions that are offered to people don't seem to be all that effective. If we take antidepressants, for example, they work for some people, I suppose, but far too often they've got way too many side effects, and there's just, you kind of wonder if you're making any progress. And then there's, of course, talk therapy, which can be helpful to feel connected and feel like you're cared for and feel like somebody is listening. All those things are valuable, but not real valuable for getting unstuck. We just find ourselves looking for the deeper and deeper root of the problem. And if we do that long enough, we begin to feel quite hopeless and wondering, hey, man, what's wrong with me? Why can't I get it right? And what I found is there's no solution that is offered that really addresses the real problem. And the real problem is we're just not seeing things clearly. If I could say it just so candidly, just so blankly, when we're not enjoying life, when we're depressed, when we're anxious, when we're addicted, and we're just not seeing life correctly. And the reason the magic mushrooms are so helpful is because, and by the way, you don't have to believe anything I'm saying, right? Like this is all just from my perspective. This is what I've observed in trying to make sense of this, and I'll tell you why it's been so important to me in just a minute. But the reason that magic mushrooms have been so effective in the people that I've worked with and in my own life is, you ever get that feeling that like you've thought about this every way you can, and no matter how many times you think about it, it comes to a dead end. Both options suck. And no matter which way you think about it, it don't ever come out any way different. It's just because if we imagine the world as being like we're looking through a door, we're looking through this tiny little peephole. We're looking at this situation through this tiny little peephole, and when we use substances like magic mushrooms, it widens that peephole so that we can see what's really going on. Because sometimes we get so fixated, and our brains can just feel like they're on repeat. We're not doing any real thinking. We're just repeating. And that can get us into trouble. So in my experience, magic mushrooms broaden people's perspective to allow them to see the world more clearly. So they don't have to cope, right? They don't have to just go in front of the mirror and tell themselves that they're amazing every day. They instead can just face the day with this sense of belonging, the sense of, hey, yeah, I'm supposed to be here, and there's this sense of harmony with what's around, instead of the feeling, which I fear, and I have felt myself, this feeling that we're kind of an intruder and not really sure if what the fuck's going on here? Does that make any sense?
It sure does. Yeah, I've never heard of it referred to as, that the intruder. Like I've always felt I've always viewed myself, or I shouldn't say always, I mean it's a little dramatic, but often viewed myself as a an outsider. And an intruder feels even more like there's a sense of danger. An outsider, at least you can kind of, control your presentation in a sense. There's a feeling of like I kind of choose a little bit of being an outsider, where there's like the intruder. Yeah, there feels like there's an element of danger or a perceived danger. So it's really interesting that you say that, and it definitely resonates with me. I'm just like a lot of the things that you're saying, like seeing things clearly, for sure. For myself in my own sobriety, it was like a lot of the stories that I was attaching to things that were, there was victim stories, so then I could blame somebody instead of just doing my own internal work. There's lots of different things like that. So for me to see something clearly, and I have used, of course, plant medicines to be able to do this, it has allowed me to, take that finger that was like my safety net of pointing at an external circumstance or another person, pointing it back at myself in a safe way, a safe zone to do it. And man, it was like so much more empowering to do that. Whereas before I was just like, my ego was getting in the way and just not allowing me to do that. It was like, no, it's this person's fault or it's this circumstance's fault. And strangely enough, pointing the finger back at myself was like one of the most empowering things I have done. And yeah, a lot of that is, I think it ties into what you're saying about seeing the world clearly and broadening, my perspective on something that was otherwise just like you say, it's like all these thoughts come into this log jam moment or spot, right? So yeah, great stuff. That's really cool. It definitely resonates with me.
If I could take what you were saying and do a little something to it. Uh, it is a progression, of course, to go from blaming someone else to finding responsibility within ourselves. Um, an even broader perspective is when we come to the point, and this is not, these are, none of these are eternal states. These are moments. These are moments. That moment of that feeling of being an intruder. This isn't an eternal state. These are moments of significant disorientation. These
Mm,
moments when we feel like this, these are like the check engine light on the car that said, "Hey man, something ain't right.
yeah,
Something ain't right."
right.
And this, see, what we got to understand is we got to understand that this ain't right. Instead of being hypnotized into thinking, well, this is just the way that it is for a depressed person.
Mm, mm,
This is just the way it is for an addict. No, no, no. We can look at it that way, of course. However, there is another way to look at it, and that is that these feelings of great despair or whatever aren't because you are that person. It's because it's a warning to say, yo, this is not where you want to be.
mm.
And the point of this whole thing is this is what it means to trust yourself. Man, if something is like real dangerous to you, I feel like I'm getting off on a tangent, but
Yeah.
the point is to listen to that. So,
No, I like that. So listening to that, I want to get into specifically before we get into your story, one more question or an opportunity to let everybody know what you're doing. It looks like you have it's either a book or a program, Microdosing 101, and this is right off your website there. What does that look like as far as if there is somebody that's listening to this that's going, okay, yeah, this is, there is a missing element to my, recovery or sobriety. I've seemingly tried everything, and what you're saying here is really, really hitting me. What does it look like? Is it a program that you've created? Yeah, just a little bit more about what you got going on there.
yeah, so the the microdosing 101 guide is basically everything you need to know about microdosing magic mushrooms for mental health. So It goes into a bit of the science of how it works, some studies that were done by places like Yale, Johns Hopkins University, even the FDA. In fact, the FDA
Wow.
had a headline calling magic mushrooms a breakthrough therapy for depression. So the Microdosing 101 book goes into a bit of that and then tells you how to microdose, when to microdose, covers the basic questions of what it is and what it can do for you. So it gives you a real ground, a foundational understanding of microdosing to see if it might be for you. And then after you get your book, then there's an offer for you to get a 3-month supply of magic mushrooms in wafer form for microdosing. So instead of it being in a powder, which is really messy, we've made it into a wafer that you just break apart into quarters. You take a quarter of it, you can chew it like Flintstone vitamin, you can dissolve it in your coffee, or you can, eat it with your breakfast. And about 20 minutes later, you begin to feel the, that relaxing, at ease kind of clarity and buzz that comes from microdosing. And people report that, they stop using antidepressants. They feel more clear. They're sleeping better. They don't feel depressed. They don't feel anxious. And I mean, I'm not a doctor, so this is not medical advice. This is just observations. It just seems that if people feel bad and you give them this thing and it makes them feel good, then something in the brain really needs whatever this thing is. So I'm starting to think that we have a psilocybin deficiency as a society,
Yeah.
and that if people have more psilocybin in their brain, they'd probably be
Yeah.
happier.
I love that, man. That's so cool. I've never heard it. I love that. A question for you. Do you actually have a like distribution company? Like, do you have like a mushroom, you know what I mean? Like, I don't know how to word it, like a mushroom, like drop shipping operation. Is that what I'm reading into this? Like, you have a source that's part of your, program and everything else that you do?
Well, we grow the mushrooms ourselves, and
Nice.
then we press them into wafers, and each wafer contains nothing but pressed magic mushrooms, which is a custom blend of psilocybin mushrooms that we developed after 3 years of testing, actually.
Wow.
And then we do put a little bit of ginger in each wafer to help with digestion and metabolism. So those are the only two ingredients: magic mushrooms and ginger to help with metabolism and digestion.
That's amazing. A question for you. Whereabouts are you based out of these days? Are you allowed to disclose that?
Well, yeah, I'm just kind of traveling around right now,
Cool. Cool.
and yeah,
I like that.
just traveling around.
I've always had an envy of folks that have just been able to just kind of keep traveling. So that's really cool. That almost sounds like a whole other episode altogether. We'll save that for later. When you mentioned, okay, or the Flintstones vitamin, you say ingest. But is there a recommended time to do microdosing? I have heard morning time can be a great. I love myself. I love mornings. Mornings became very redefined for me when I did choose alcohol free. I used to dread mornings for obvious reasons, the hangover,
Mhm.
etc. I love mornings now, and I have used microdosing in the morning, and what it does for the rest of my day. It just sort of echoes and whispers throughout the rest of the day. What is your recommendation for that?
Dude, that's great feedback. That's great feedback. A lot of people say that, when they microdose in the morning, they feel like a focus, like they're dialed in for the day. And then other people have told me that they like microdosing at night because it helps them to sleep. So here's what we do: is we recommend a certain protocol, right? We say, hey, look, start with 1/4 of a wafer a day for 4 days, right? 1 day, 2 day, 3 day, 4 day, and then take 3 days off. And this is so that you don't build up a tolerance, and you can kind of get the feel for, like, okay, what's going on here? How am I feeling? And then do it again, right? Just follow that schedule. And this protocol is just a guide, right? It's just like to get you going. But the ultimate measure of success is your well-being. And so
Mm,
what we recommend is, when you start microdosing, hey, notice, hey, what do you feel? And here's what else to notice: what do you not feel? See, now
yes.
you might have always had this tension in your back because you're always on edge, and suddenly you notice you can feel the bones in your butt touching the chair, and you think, what? Huh. And so the effects of microdosing can be subtle, but that doesn't mean they're insignificant.
Yes.
And so part of the training of microdosing is really using the microdosing as a tool to help us pay closer attention. Because isn't it true that if we want to measure how much enjoyment we're having out of life, we can pretty well do it by how much attention we're paying. Right? If we're not paying much attention, we ain't enjoying ourselves. But if we're paying a lot of attention, we're enjoying ourselves. And so microdosing allows us to pay attention and thereby enjoy ourselves.
Yeah, I like that. No, for sure. You know, that's one of the main things that I like about microdosing is it gives me a lot more of an awareness and presence and things that I would just be up in my head all day about. I'm actually paying attention to the trees in the backyard and enjoying it, watching the clouds go by. You know, I can be deep in thought, but it also makes me, like, to your point, I really like how you mentioned, you notice, okay, there's something like where I'm sitting down, I notice that like part of my, bone is touching whereas, I really relate to that. It gets me more in my body. The other thing it's really worth mentioning, I want to see if it's been the same for you. My awareness of breath is so much more prominent when I'm microdosing, and it's been huge. I just over the last year and a half specifically, I've really been working on awareness of breath, and I noticed that for the longest time I'd just been doing a lot of chest breathing, and now when I do the microdosing, when I'm really paying attention, I'm having this beautiful, like, full abdomen breaths, and that really enhances everything else as well, and just gets me more more focused on my body, or at least balanced, right? A little more balanced than the usual mind clutter, and, like, to your point, you said earlier in the interview, a lot of like repetition of thought and rumination and such. So breathing, I don't know, did you have any breakthroughs or changes on your breathing through the microdosing as well?
No, but as you were describing that, I was definitely breathing better as you were going through that exercise. I was like, yeah, man,
Yeah.
this does feel better. Breathing down into my belly. That feels great. Yeah. So I appreciate that.
Yeah, for sure. How about for you personally, other experiences that you've had, other markings as far as like, I'm on the right path here. There's success here, like you mentioned. I guess, yeah, what you're feeling and what you're not feeling. And I would assume, I guess, part two of that is like, is it what else do you suggest doing? Is like journaling, you know what I mean? Is this because a lot of people, if they want to make progress, one of the best ways to know that you're making progress is having markers. Okay, 2 weeks ago, before I started microdosing, was this. Here I am now. This is all the content and everything that I've been following over the last couple weeks. Like, any recommendations or personal experience stories you can share?
Dude, um, and the most valuable thing for people, in my estimation, is a sense of community. So when people purchase Mighty Microbes, we invite them to join a private Facebook group where it's just for customers, right? And the reason this is so valuable is because if you're doing microdosing, magic mushrooms, in some ways you might feel a little bit like a weirdo. Like, it's becoming more accepted, it's becoming more mainstream, but it's still a little bit of a trend. And so having people that you can talk to about it, having people that you can be open with about it, that you can get feedback from, so that, I mean, for the average person, if they start microdosing, they can't go to their neighbor and be like, hey, I took a quarter this morning. How did you feel? That it's not a shared experience. And so people can oftentimes, if they're by themselves, journaling's great, but it's also so valuable to get feedback from others and be a part of a community where people are moving in the same direction. We don't have to believe the same thing. We don't have to worry about any of that. But everybody's moving towards, hey, man, I want to enjoy my life better. Can we work on that? And so that's what our group is all about, is using magic mushrooms to enjoy our lives as best we can.
Yeah.
Apologies for the noise in the background. There's some construction going on right across the street.
I was gonna say some guy's firing up a chainsaw over there.
Yeah.
Like, yeah. Yeah, no, great advice. I love it. It always, it just comes back to that, just as simple as that, right? You're doing this to get more enjoyment out of life. So, yeah, really cool, dude. I want you to, if you're comfortable doing it, I'd love to hear your personal story about, what life was like before and what got you into like what you're doing now. Because there is quite a powerful story that you have. I'd love to give you the open forum to be able to do that now.
Yeah, well, the reason I got involved in psychedelics at all was because I was married before, and I'm a bit of a romantic. So I proposed to her at the top of the Empire State Building in New York City, and I'd been in love with her for 2.5 years before we started dating, and it was a real fairy tale romance. We were good little Christian boys and girls, and so we didn't have sex before we got married. Uh, at the top of the Empire State Building, she said yes, and so we get married, and a few months later, we found out we're going to have a baby. And of course, we're stoked. And you know, like in this part of the story, all of my dreams are coming true. And then on the day before our first anniversary, we're driving to celebrate, and she's in the passenger seat. She's 7.5 months pregnant, and so she's got her little belly sticking out. Uh, I say, hey, why don't you take a nap, and I'll wake you up when we get there. She says, I love you. I say, I love you. And then I fell asleep driving. And when I woke up in the hospital, they told me that they only brought back one body from the accident. So Libby and our son both died, and I didn't. And so after that, that was real hard to deal with. And I've always been the kind of person who thinks, okay, I'm just gonna, all right, and just like power through it. And you can do that for a while, but there's also a lot of costs. And so for me, I torched a lot of relationships, and started drinking a lot, just making very bad decisions, but always like fiercely like sure I'm right, because that's the only thing that's keeping me together. And and dude, I was stuck because nobody could tell me nothing. Who could relate to what I was saying? You can't relate to this. And then for somebody to be like, oh man, don't worry, it wasn't your fault. Come on, man. Of course it was my fault. I fell asleep. And so I was trapped, you see. I was trapped in, and remember at the beginning of this call, I was trapped in this one way of seeing the world, you see? And bro, it was an ugly fucking way to see the world. And it was death. It was just deadly. So out of desperation, I read that you could do super doses of psychedelics that would, at the time I thought I was bipolar, so I thought maybe this would cure me. And on this trip, let me tell you something, man. Man, I realized the stuff that couldn't nobody ever tell me, but was so true. And here's what it was. I realized this. The thing that made Libby's death tragic was the same thing that made it beautiful. And that was that I loved the fucking shit out of her. See, all this time I was thinking I felt bad because I was guilty. No, I felt bad because I fucking loved her. And that's the appropriate feeling to losing someone that you love. See how subtle the twist of thought that boom got me off on this path where, dude, I'm telling you, I was trying. Bro, after this accident, I flipped an Audi in the middle of the road in the town that I lived in, landed on the roof of the car, ran another Audi off the street, broke both of the wheels, flipped an ATV, bro, like just accident after, like tempting death at every fucking corner, right? Mm-hmm. And then this trip where dude, I finally got it. Like I finally got how how, man, it sounds so weird to say, but like how the universe works. Not that I could in some way can explain it, but in that brief moment, it was like, oh wait, oh okay. And I realized that there ain't nobody to blame, that it wasn't my fault in the sense of I am operating as an intruder in this world and deviating from the what all the mystics would call the Tao or the fate, whatever that word means. What I realize is my absolute integration into this world instead of this feeling, dude, can you imagine the feeling of like being so in love with this person and working so hard to make this happen, and then you being the one responsible for its tragic conclusion, and how easily it would be to feel like you are a total and utter fuck up. God damn it, let me tell you, that's exactly what it felt like. And look, man, look, this is hard stuff, but if anybody out there is listening, this is hard stuff. But look, when there's this feeling down where we just can't quite get at, like where you're trying to peel the wallpaper off the wall, but it's so damn tight, your fingernail can't even get underneath it. Man, ain't no talking about it that's going to help, because you're talking above the thing. It's this perception, and this perception is something that you got to experience. Couldn't nobody tell me, hey man, it ain't your fault. Somebody told me it wasn't my fault, I wanted to punch them. In this experience, I realized, hey man, it ain't your fault. Exact same thing, but in a way that was custom made for my psyche. Do you see? Like in a way that nobody could say.
Yeah. That's dude, that's so powerful. That's powerful stuff. Thank you for being so, forthcoming and honest, and it's an incredibly powerful story. So, yeah, a lot of the words that you're saying are, different takes, slightly different takes on things I've heard before, but I really like, yeah, like even what you're saying, the custom made experience that you can have when you do whether it's a big trip or, to a degree with the microdosing as well. And it's an experiential, like an energetic experience, as opposed to like what you're saying, where you're in your head or you're trying to like talk your way through something.
Mm-hmm.
Man, some of these things it's incredibly challenging, if not impossible, to talk your way out of some things, right? And that was what was so challenging for me, like in my alcohol free choice, was mentally trying to coach myself through it or whatever it would be, without addressing what these feelings that were coming up inside me. I would just be like, no, hold on a second, go back down, I'm busy, I'm thinking about this, right? Instead of just like, okay, hold on, wait a
Yeah,
second.
yeah,
It's
yeah,
like it's
yeah,
counterintuitive to
yeah.
just go, okay, wait, okay, I'm gonna be curious about this feeling. So, but dude, that took me so long to get to that stage. So yeah, I guess that's more of just an observation on my side of things, comparing notes with you. Um, so after that big, the big journey or the big trip that you had, I imagine that was like a big light bulb moment, a big epiphany for you. What happened after that? What were your stages after that? Like, did you, okay, this is something I have to continue with? Yeah. What did that look like for you after that?
Dude, the way this has all come about has been okay. So, look, at yeah, after that, I started working with a guy who sold magic mushroom grow kits, and I was writing the emails for his company, helping to sell these grow kits, right? And so I started learning a lot about how magic mushrooms are grown, and then I had this idea. Hey, look, what if we offer a retreat down in like Costa Rica, and we guide people through a hero's journey to overcome addiction? I wonder if anybody'd be interested. So it turns out they were. So we did a retreat. It was dope. It was amazing. Gosh, it was so amazing. So amazing. And then, so then we did it again. We led two of them in a year. The third one's coming up in January. And in so doing, I met someone who supplies these mighty micro wafers, and we developed a relationship. I went out and spent some time with him, and he's got the same vision that I do about the ability of magic mushrooms to heal and really to restore our like equilibrium mentally and emotionally. And so it's been great. It's been just a fantastic experience. And the whole point of this really is to get more people to come to these retreats where we can guide them to a life-changing experience that they wouldn't have anywhere else.
You had me at, hero's journey. I love the everything, to do with the whole
Uh,
hero's journey. And I think we're all on. It's so funny. I don't know if you ever watched, it's a documentary you can watch on YouTube called Finding Joe. And it's all about how hero's journey shows up in like pop culture and just everywhere else in life. It's really cool. Like so many movies use that formula, of course. And
yeah.
so after that, I was like, reticular activating system. Everything I did was a hero's journey. Even going to the fridge to get a drink, I'm like, oh, here we go, another hero's journey, right? So I love that. That resonates big time. Recovery from addiction to me is big time. Hero's journey or recovering from trauma. In your case, and being able to have that, the third stage where you're taking what you've learned and you're helping others. So when you're talking about this retreat and, dude, it just sounds amazing. You said there's one coming up in January. Is that something that is like, is there a certain website or is it just a matter of reaching out to you if somebody's interested in that?
Yeah, well, we're going to release the information. We're only have room for 7 people. One person's already signed up, so we've got 6 spots left, and we offer it to our customers first. So if somebody wants to order some Mighty Micro, then they get invited to the Facebook group. That's where we make the first offer, and then we'll make the other offer to the email list. So if you're interested, just sign up for the Microdosing 101 book at mightymicro.net, and you'll get the information there. So mightymicro.net will give you be able to sign you up on the email list where you can find out the information.
It's awesome. Whereabouts are you able to disclose where the retreat is? Do you know yet, or is it? I guess obviously you know, but
Yeah. It's in this gorgeous town called Nosara, Costa Rica,
oof.
and it's right on the beach, and it's in the jungle, and it is the perfect environment for a hero's journey because that's exactly what it feels like. We do the ceremony at a waterfall.
Oh man.
We hike out to the waterfall. There's 5 days of preparation beforehand. I mean, it is an intense experience, but it is also one that you will never forget. People who have this experience routinely say it's one of the 5 most significant experiences of their life.
Yeah, that's. I mean,
So
hey,
how about that?
that's that's high praise. That's high praise.
Yeah, it's
So
pretty good.
I like this starting it up in January too, right? For like New Year, chance to be like rediscover yourself, reinvent yourself right at the beginning of the year. So that's a really cool stage to do it as well. I'm up in Canada, so like that'd be like right in the middle of winter too, which is great to get away
Oh
for a
yeah,
bit. Go
yeah,
somewhere warm.
that's
So
right.
really cool, really cool. Yeah, we got a lot of the information about yourself. I know you got a really cool YouTube channel, which I'll link in the show notes as well. Just various information about microdosing and such. Anything else that you're wanting to like? I guess where else can people find you as far as if they want to reach out to you and so forth?
Dude, the best place is mightymicro.net. That's where I do all of my. That's where I communicate with people most via email and through our private Facebook group. And yeah, it's we give tips and insights on how to microdose and listen for people who are curious. The ebook will give you some foundational knowledge and you know clear up some misconceptions. Sometimes people are like, hey man, if I start microdosing, am I going to start tripping? Will magic mushrooms show up on a drug test? uh, will the DEA deliver my order? Am I going to get in trouble? All of these questions, which are understandable. We address all of them, and you know, in our view, it's a great opportunity to help people where they can't get this kind of help anywhere else. So
Right on. And is that ebook free? Like if you were to go onto the website, you can order that for free, and that can be step one essentially, right? Just inform
that's right.
yourself, answer some questions. Really cool, really cool. What is your view on it? I've noticed for sure that the world is softening or at least changing their perspective on this whole idea of microdosing, the using of
Mm,
plant medicine to, it's not nearly as vilified as it was even 10
yeah.
years ago. So what is your view on that? And you being right in the thick of it, like, well, how has your experience been with this over the last few years specifically?
Dude, the a top official at the DEA recently came out and said the train has left the station on magic mushrooms. That's the top official at the DEA saying publicly the train has left the station on magic mushrooms. Dude, in my view, don't nobody care, man. Um, all that's happening is the lobbyists and the pharmaceutical companies and the politicians are all doing their backdoor dealings to figure out who's going to get paid what when the paper is signed so that they can make all the profit that they want to. In the meantime, they're just screwing around trying to get all the documents right. And so
Mm,
everybody knows it's just a matter of time before it's legalized. And they're just waiting for all that stuff to be done. So I think this is a great time um, for people to start taking control of their own mental health. Because look, this is just my view, but as soon as pharmaceutical companies get involved, they're going to screw it up. I mean, they're going to
yeah,
figure out some way to make it worse.
right.
So I'd say, get involved now.
Yeah.
And I mean, dude, like, here's the biggest thing. Like, and you don't have to get anything from me. I mean, it doesn't matter to me whether you like buy Mighty Micro. The point that I want to make is, dude, if you're having a hard time and you've tried what you think is just about everything and nothing's worked, it can feel like, oh man, this is just the way it is. And I want you to know it ain't. That ain't just the way it is.
Yeah.
And there are ways to feel better. They might be outside of our present comfort zone. They might be like, well, shit, man, I never thought about doing that. That's some serious shit. Maybe, but feeling like shit is some serious shit too. So I mean, we
Yeah.
gotta figure out which one is more important.
Yeah.
And the and I just don't want anybody to listening to this have an excuse to be like, oh well, this is just the way it is for me. It ain't.
Yeah. That's cool. That's cool. I'm gonna ask one final question here, Michael. Thanks for your time today. I like popping this on everybody. Getting very variety of answers on this. What is like being authentic or authenticity mean to you? What is your definition of it?
uh, I think what authenticity is and what authenticity is portrayed to be are very different things.
Totally agree. Totally agree.
That's the best answer I can give you.
Really? Oh, that's a bit of a cliffhanger, man. What? Yeah, I mean that's enigmatic. I like it. It's intriguing. Can we get one more layer out of you?
Well, I think I'd be stepping into a vast flowing river of many assumptions, and this is one of those topics that is very difficult to talk about because it's so wrapped up with people's sense of themselves, and it's, in my view, it's quite a dangerous question. And when people unsolidly tell me how authentic they are, I immediately consider the possibility that the opposite may be true.
Cool. I like that. We can leave it at that. I get a vibe from that for sure. Michael, thank you so much for coming on the show today, and best of luck with the retreats and everything else you got going on. I really appreciate you coming on and giving some information, and I really, I got a lot of respect for what you're doing, and keep up the great work. Thanks for coming on today.
Dude, thank you so much, man. It was awesome to chat and spend some time together. I appreciate
Awesome.
you having me on.
Thank you.